That's okay. We are just. So good afternoon to those viewers, and I'm extremely sorry for a delay of almost about 7 minutes today. Can I have those microphone off, sir? Yeah. Thank you so much. So good afternoon and welcome you all for yet another episode of The Big Talk. And before I start my deliberation with the guest today, I always feel proud to keep mentioning about my university, Amrita Vidyapeetham, from where I'm talking to you. And to begin with, you all know that Amrita Vidyapeetham has all streams except the School of Law. And recently we have concluded our Amrita Engineering Entrance Examinations. And those of you who have written, wish you all the best. And the result will be announced on the 1st of September. We have 3 recognitions. One is for being the first private university as per the Times Higher Education in India. The second is being the 4th best university as far as the institutional ranking framework is concerned, again by MHRT. And yet another recognition as of 3 or 4 days that Amrita has been selected the 4th best university in innovations and achievement. So these are the 3 achievements what we had received in the last 3 months or so during the lockdown. So we have here with us Mr. Doctor, are you there? Doctor? Yeah. Yeah, you're there. Okay. So I wanted to see you before I introduce you. Is your microphone on or is your microphone off?
We can test that. You can hear me now?
I can hear you, but you can mute it. Now it is mute. Otherwise, there's an echoing as far as my talk is concerned. So before we begin the topic is going to be the future of schools, raising students, teachers, and community voices during the and post-pandemic. So this is the topic which we're going to deliberate on, but we have certainly have to officially welcome and introduce Dr. Tapan Panda. He's an alumnus of University of Houston from United States of America. Dr. Tapan holds a doctorate in business management. He has taught in 3 allied Indian Institute of Management, Lucknow, Kozhikode, and Indore as a full-time professor, and is now the CEO, Chief Academic Officer of Ampersand Group, Mumbai. He is involved in education space, both in policy making and technology-enabled implementation, and works with various governments across the country as well as internationally. Sir, on behalf of Amrita Vidyapeetham, it is a pleasure to welcome you for this big talk. And I'm sure and confident about the discussion that will go through in the next 45 minutes to 50 minutes. Our viewers are going to get benefited out of the topic what I mentioned to you, the future of our schools. Before we begin with the deliberation, Doctor, I want to ask you about the recent announcement of the NEP, the National Educational Policy. And this has been done after almost more than 30-40 years of high deliberations, and I believe that the government of India has taken opinions from people like you, the educationalists, lakhs and lakhs of people. I think it was lakhs and lakhs have sent in their recommendation, and everything was pulled off, brought together, and then they have come to a conclusion, and it's being implemented, if I'm right, from 2021. Now, what I want to ask you, I don't want to go step by step. We all have the NEP with us. But what are your takeaways from those NEP, sir? Over to you, Doctor. Now, unmute. You have to unmute. Yeah. Please go ahead, sir.
I think somebody is somebody is handling that part. That's why I didn't touch that button. Somebody's doing.
No,
Okay,
no,
I can do that part.
unmuted,
Okay,
muted.
thank you. Okay, thank you for this, and thank you for inviting me to the show. I'm thankful to Amrita University and the team which have brought this show live to all of you, those who are watching this. And I'm very happy that this show is already a month old or more than that period of time, where a lot of issues which are related to education and life in general have been discussed about, deliberated about. And I'm fortunate that I'm here for this episode. So my sincere thanks to the host for inviting me on this part. I have some old connections with Amrita University because my son, when I was in IM Kozhikode, went to Amrita school. So the first few years of my son's education has been in Amrita school. And all those people who are in management academia, they know that I work with a professor in UK called Sunil Sahadev. And Sunil's career started after his IIT PhD. He started with Amrita Business School in Coimbatore. After that, he moved to IM Kozhikode. So on academic front, I have a connection in that way, as well as from family side. My child has been very influenced by teachings of Amrita and Mike. I've got opportunity to meet her also a couple of times, me and my family. So this is like getting reconnected. That's my kind of thing, and I'm so happy to hear that so many accolades have happened in this pandemic period of time. And they said that when there are difficult times, you get great news. So since we are passing through difficult times, these are some of the great news. And all those aspiring students are going to have a great time when they join the school and join the university for their courses. Yes, I agree with you that the current national education policy tries to do something different. But the first point is there's a difference between policy and implementation. And they say that Indians are very good in policy making. So we make great policies. What matters is how they are being implemented and what results we are going to see after the implementation period of time. Whether the policy is futuristic, answer is yes, the policy is futuristic. But what kind of framework and organization structure which is required to implement such a great deviation that you're looking at to the traditional method of education is something to be talked about. I don't want to sound pessimistic at the beginning of this exercise. The only challenge is education is a joint subject. So policy making can happen at the central level, but you need state participations for executing on that part of it. Like many other aspects where politics takes the front seat than the development or other issues, I guess here also if there is a political shift or political difference of opinion as far as this policy is concerned, I have my own apprehensions that the commitment levels that is expected from the state governments for restructuring that part is going to be a challenge. That's the first one. The first one is because it is a joint exercise, the government in a federal structure has to take everybody together and implement this task. So the timeline which is being provided that this will be done in 2021 doesn't sound great to me in that sense because winning back to all the states and doing that part is the first thing. Second part is we have to look at what kind of allocations we do as a percentage of our GDP. Unfortunately, over a period of time, the amount of money which is allocated for education space or public health for that matter in India as a percentage of your GDP has been abysmally low. And when you are talking about reforming the education sector, particularly relooking at the hard part of the infrastructure, then there is a greater commitment which is required. With the current pandemic scenario, post budget, once you are announcing this policy, I have my own apprehensions that additional budgeting which is required for implementing will be a question there because I don't think the focus of the government is more to look at that part. These are the macro levels. The second point that to look at. Third part is, of course, if you see 1940s or 50s, the amount of control over education by the government administration, and slowly over a period of time, the amount of control has receded, other than making policies and sometimes making some regressive policies. Let me put it bluntly in that way. It has been more the centers of excellence has grown more in the private space, and somehow the government has been bit averse to public-private partnership. If it is a highway where capital investment is more required more, in that case, probably government is more happier to build highways by a PPP model compared to higher education or education space, where they think that if a private player comes with a profit motive, and they have some kind of antagonistic to the idea of public-private partnership. I was expecting that this government will be open to public-private partnership and try to invite more centers of excellence to come and execute in that part or bring private capital for that. So that is one challenge that I find here. If the layouts are not there, many of my colleagues, I recently wrote a piece on India Today, so many of my friends have commented about that part, that if the budgetary allocations are not there, so where is the capital? Where is the money that will flow in? If you don't bring private equity into the picture, if you don't bring private players into the picture, probably you're restricting the flow of that equity, which will take a longer period of time for execution. I was wondering if you would have permitted for profit private enterprises with quality standards, both at the school levels as well as the higher education level, probably would have attracted more amount of capital. So this kind of shortfall which is there from what has been planned and what is required on the field to make a transformation, that could have been taken care. So the public budget which we have got there will not be stressed on that part. So I'm just wondering, not only the intent part, not only the cooperation part, but also the budgetary outlays, as well as the structure of the enterprise. That is going to play a crucial role whether this policy will be implemented properly or not. But as I said, that I'm very optimistic about this policy. So I have my own feeling that there are a couple of drastic changes which they have made. If you look back to advanced nations, developed nations, in developed nations, the percentage of people with skill is very high. For example, Japan stands high in that 98% of the people in Japan are skilled. And the number of people that those who are skilled in India is a very small percentage of that. So naturally, if you are going to skill people more and more. In that case, pressure on creating more number of jobs will be lesser, particularly on skilled jobs will be lesser in that case. Higher education per se in India has been a deferred employment. If you look back to the history of evolution of higher education in India, when the Britishers came here, it was essentially a deferred employment. So after class 10, everybody metric exam, that's what it was called. So after class 10, people will come back and ask for a job. So take these people to the university and put them into some courses of studying history, geography, politics. So after 4 or 5 years, there will be some kind of job and they can end in there. I always think that from the beginning, it has never been employment oriented. It has always been a deferred employment exercise than really giving them a skill or a meaning to the job. For the first time, government is looking into that part, that people should be given skill in form of vocational education. So they're trying to integrate vocational education at the school levels. If that kind of integration happens at the school levels, all those students who don't want to or don't aspire to continue their higher education for some or other regions can take up jobs which are available there if they're being skilled there. In fact, a nation like US also, large number of people don't go to the universities. They are happy with the kind of skills they get in their schools and so for more years, and then they'll go back and they'll take up some job and do that part of it. In a nation like India, it is very important to have skilling exercise. I think this education policy talks about the skilling part of it. There are a lot of 21st century skills which we have talked about. Maybe later we can converse about that part.
No,
This policy talks about that. Yes, please.
thank you, Doctor. Doctor, you briefed the NEP of 2020 well, but I just want the viewers to know, if you compare it with the existing policy and the policy of 2020, what are the major changes that you are looking at, and how is it going to help the education society as such? So, what are the major changes? You can say, okay, this is okay. One is that five plus three plus four, fine. But other than that, if you go a little deeper into that, there are quite a few changes that will take place. And how is it really going to help the schools and
Okay.
colleges?
Okay. We have to look at what goals they have pursued. Let me start with pre-primary education. Pre-primary education in India is primarily not pre-primary education. It is essentially nutrition. If you look back to the age of 3 to 6, where most of the development, human development happens, that period of time in the form of Anganwadis or Balwadis or early child care centers in India were essential meat for nutrition. If you look back to CASH, Common Application Software, which is being developed by Government of India, where every assistant available in the Anganwadi Balwadi would like to go and key in the data, there is no LMS there, no learning management system. No learning related data is being keyed in. So what data is being keyed in? There is a child weight. And there are some proteins which are given to the children in packets and they take it home or they eat it there. Their weights are being measured. That is being keyed in. And that talks about how the government has been successful in managing malnutrition in our nation. So the objective of early child care education was primarily managing malnutrition in India. Subsequently, they said, okay, of course, if they're coming here and other than getting food, let them teach something. So teach something and developing a curriculum are two different things. Teach something is different than what is to be done. I worked with government of Maharashtra and government of Rwanda in Africa. trying to build up a curriculum, specific curriculum which will address to the development, human development goals, and as well as provide some kind of an education. And while working on that, I found out that there is no system per se in government to capture the learning data of the children between the age group of 3 and to 6. So this policy talks about how you are making them school ready. That means now the education per se will start at the age of 3, and 3 to 6 was where the nutrition was happening. Now the education will start at 3 with a structured curriculum. Of course, the structured curriculum for a child between 3 to 6 is different than in a formal education system. I can give an example. In the formal education systems, we make the child, okay, you should learn A, B, C, D, E, or you should learn how to speak or how to write. But when you go to 3 to 6 age, there is something called fine motor development, gross motor development. These are all related to human side. So the children should be able to respond to things. So these are the certain things which has to be done there at 3 to 6 levels, which the private sector surprisingly did it. A lot of private sector KG schools, K-12 schools, when they came to the pre-primary education, their programs are very structured and they have not focused on the kind of rote learning exercises which are done at the higher levels because of the CBSE board or ICSE board. I think the best part of to learn from private sector is not about the K-12 space, but the kindergarten space, the early space, where there is no structured curriculum, but they have been able to look at sustainable development goals, and they've been able to look at what are the human development related factors that has to be integrated into the curriculum in building it up. I think this is something the government has learned from the private sector or from the panel which talked about pre-primary education and have tried to bring into the education now. So learning will happen between the age of 6 to 3 to 6. So it will be a formal learning now from the age of group of 3 to 6. And it is natural because over so many period of time, we have strengthened and we have set up the nutritional program, malnutrition program, anti-malnutrition program, 3 to 6. So what was happening is that if you go back and do a research, you will find out since their basic focus is to give the food, all these Anganwadi workers, they're not used for learning purpose. They're being used for various purposes. They go for census work. They go for mother's health checkup. So most of the times they are traveling in the village and the children are in the school. If you have a 3 hour engagement, that's an engagement level, 3 hour engagement level you have got, and the food is only 1 hour of engagement. What about the balance 2 hour of engagement? That is the time, that is something which they have planned well in that case. So that is something which we have to look is interesting in this case. First one, the examination system per se, it was purely based over rote learning system. I don't know how they are going to implement that part, but at least they have addressed that they are looking at holistic development of scholars, students, and they are going to modify their examination levels by creating a national assessment center or an organization which is going to look into that part. A lot has to be done on assessment part of it. Now people make an argument that traditional India has been rote learning based system, but you have to understand that if there is no book to read and the scriptures are being there which passes on from generation to generation, and the monks were teaching them, but it is not only that they were learning that part and not implementing, they were implementing, whether it is about living the life of a monk or the living the life of an adult in the society, whatever are being preached as a part of moral education, but that moral education was implemented by the people. It's only the Britishers, when they came there, they put a formal examination system. But all the great scholars India has produced in the ancient past, when nobody knew about Europe, they were all coming out of the same practice of where the teacher knows everything and he is in a higher pedestal and the knowledge flows to the student. Student learns that and implements. It doesn't have to be codified in a book or in an examination pattern. So I'm sure government will be definitely working harder in that space about developing an alternative examination plan where we are will not be interested on 96%, 99%. I'm a bit scared about someday some child will get 102% or 105%, the way they score these days. And I don't know whether scoring 99% or 100% really builds a good scholar or not. I do not know that part of, because we did a research at the performance of the child in class 10 and performance of the child at class 12. And unfortunately, the result says more than 37% grades drop down when they go to class 12. If the students are so good, scoring such a high percentage, they should have continued when they come to class 12, which is not happening. That means the method of examination that we are following is not correct. Otherwise, the same kind of consistency should have been there when they come to class 12 there. So that is why examination reformation is one of the key challenges which you find in this case.
And as you rightly said, initially the students score 100 or 100, even 102, 105 percentage out of 100. And in some colleges, even in place like Delhi and all, the cutoff is 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, the cutoff itself is 100%. So, I mean, they're very competitive. As you rightly said, we are not surprised if things go beyond 100 on 100, so it could happen. Now, from an NEP, let's move on to the current situation, doctor. I just want you to brief from your own experiences and exposure regarding the COVID 19, more focused into the schools, the impact of this COVID 19 across the world, across the globe. But then, how is it impacting our school education system? How is it impacting more related to our schools
Yes,
and the
yes.
economy in India? Over to you, sir.
Yeah. Since we have worked across the spectrum, I'll be able to give you a first-hand note on how it has impacted there. So on one extreme, I work with your high group of schools, which are premium schools in the marketplace where the parents can afford and the children can afford a laptop or a computer and they can have access. So you just have to change the mode of teaching and learning from face to face to online. On the other extreme, I work with Government of Punjab and their other schools, which is a PPP model, other schools where the children are located in the villages and many of them don't have even a smartphone, right? So when you are saying that you are going to provide online education, how will you provide an online education without a device? Now there are methods which I implemented there whereby it can be created, the problem can be solved there, though they are suboptimal solutions, but they can be solved there. But more than the technology part, there is a large change on the social dimension which has happened. I'd like to brief about that part first. Now when you ask your teacher to teach and the teacher is at home, the teacher plays multiple role. Majority of the teachers are female in the school levels in that sense. So they have to cook, they have to take care of the children, and they have to manage their extended work environment. So suddenly they found out that job had entered into their personal life. In a traditional brick and mortar school system, the school time is fixed that they go at 9, they come back at 5, so that is their professional time, and beyond that is their personal time. For the first time in this pandemic, suddenly we find out the professional time entered into the personal time. That has created a lot of stress among the teachers in handling that part, first level. Second, many of them teachers are not very tech savvy. They may be tech savvy for doing a WhatsApp, but their belief that things can be taught on an online platform is very limited. I found the highest possible resistance among anyone as far as adapting to online education is with the teachers, not with parents. So that is why adapting quickly or forced adoption to online teaching was a challenge at the school levels because teachers were not willing to that part. Third part, the pedagogical change. When you do a face-to-face exercise and when you take it to an online mode, there has to be a pedagogical shift. A school like Wipcure or Oberreis, all of them, they have their experts, so they can train them quickly how to do a pedagogical change. But when you look at the large number of students in government schools and colleges, the teachers were teaching in the same mode they were teaching inside the classrooms. So the pedagogical adaptation to the emerging situation was a big challenge in that case. People say that yes, everybody has moved online, but how effective is that online and what is the transition is one question to be looked at. So this is as far as teacher is concerned. Teacher cooperation is minimum. Teachers feel that the technology platform is a threat for them. They feel that they are slow learners to adapt to the platform. They're not able to handle because their approach to teaching is sequential. In a class, if there are 30 students, they're asking question to one student, that student has to respond. When you go to a platform, you ask one question, all 30 students are responding at the same time. If you accept an answer from one, there are 29 or 20 of them who have a different answer. So they come back, they make an argument. So how do you resolve that problem when it is about execution part of that? That's one thing on teacher side. Student side, yes, when you look at a school student, he has to go play, socialize, all that part. Now what has happened is he's fixed into a computer screen and he has to listen to his teachers on computer screen. Despite being so much of research where we say that 25 minutes is the highest possible time that should be given to them continuously for a lecture, I wonder how many are following them. They're still going back to 45 minutes mode or 50-minute mode and teaching to the classrooms. So this generation's attention span is very limited. Online attention span is further limited. And then in this chaos, that is being limited. And then we are trying to stretch them out, which is their cooperation is not there. Parents being confined to the school, suddenly there is a change in the role of the father. Since the mother is also managing office and also managing the child education, father has to take some roles of the mother. So there is a father-mother conflict happening as far as the roles are concerned, who is going to do what part. And unfortunately, many parents don't enjoy teaching to their children. They don't do that. And there is a perception that if you have got financial independence, you have got surplus, and you can pass on this responsibility of teaching learning of your child to the school. So your argument is that you pay the fee and let the school take care of that part. And suddenly you find out the child comes back home and the parents are being getting a mail that they have to ensure that the child is learning, the child is doing the homework, all that part. So the intensity of learning that happens at the home front also creates a challenge for the parents there. It is what I find there. School administration is, of course, they are facing a problem because fees are not being paid. So you must have read articles where the parents are saying no school, so why there should be a fee there. So administration side, so teachers are losing their jobs. I think in Karnataka, I think more than 30,000 teachers have lost their jobs because there are no fees coming in. The private players are taking away the jobs of the teachers. Only problem is when the school opens up, the teachers will not come back on the same day to the school. So theoretically, the school will open on September 4th, but to find out a new teacher and recruit and induct, and then probably will be end of September. So I wonder what the kids are going to do for those 20 days there. So it is chaotic. It is chaotic.
So you mean to say that schools are opening in September?
No, I just gave that in the next round of unlocking schools.
What would be the impact on the stakeholders of the schools? I mean, finally, what would happen to the stakeholders?
I think the first there are a lot of programs which are happening on how we do open them a hygienic way, and there is no community spread because children are more prone to infections. They may not get infected by COVID, but they're most likely to be infected by other related diseases that comes with the COVID. So that is why they're saying the most infectious period is the rainy season. Once the rainy season over, winter comes, the number of infection comes down. So that is a great time to come back. But they're going to lose a certain number of months or years of, most likely this is going to be a 0 year for children. So we are wondering how much they are going to learn on this year and how much of learning of this year will be passed into next year, because many parents are looking at 99% next year. So they will definitely force their children not to miss anything. So this year you do a 60% discount on your studies, and next year you do a premium of 140 for your studies. So there'll be a lot of stress happening next year.
Which you mean to say that zero year, which means the student now he has gone to 2020 from 6 to 7, and if you call it a zero year, so in 2021 he'll be still in his same class, or you think he gets promoted to the next class? How would it happen, doctor? Because you've done a lot of study and research on this. If you call it as a 0 year, will the student lose that 1 year? Will they lose it, or I mean, how do you say? I mean, that parents will accept it. Parents will accept 0 year, but if you go and tell a parent that your child should have gone to sixth in 2020 from fifth, but since it's a 0 year, they will go to the sixth only in 2021 and seventh in 2022. Will the parents accept? I have my own doubts on that. So, what do you mean by the 0 year?
I think 0 year is zero learning year. They'll just get us passed to the next class. But the amount of learning they're supposed to have this year, they will not have. They will have a partial learning. Balance will be loaded next year. So this year is not a challenge. 21-22 is going to be a challenge because 21-22, they have to cover balance portion of 2021. So the dropout rate will be higher. The dropout rate will be higher in 21-22. 2021, everybody will move.
But doctor, even before the pandemic, COVID-19, the teachers were finding it difficult to complete the portion within those 10 months of their academic year. I've seen many teachers rushing in the month of January, February. Oh my God, I've not completed my portions in the normal academic year. Now, if doctor says it's going to be 140 or 150% learning in 2021 to 2002, it would be a cumbersome teaching for the teacher, as well as it's a very cumbersome learning for the students. So, they will be stressed to great extent. That's number one. Number two, they will have to forego the usual fun in the school. Like we have games period, we have PT period, we have picnics, we have excursions. So when you don't have those time, we'll have to keep all those things aside for the next 2 years. Is that what the doctor feels?
I think that's going to happen. There is one more problem. The government is going to restrict the space for child. In a classroom where 30 students are supposed to sit, now there will be 10 or 12 students sitting there. So the schools have to run multiple shifts When the schools run multiple shifts, the pressure will be on the teacher because the people are not going to recruit more teachers. Because you cannot put the way you are keeping your kids in one classroom, the number of students per classroom is going to come down. There's one more challenge.
So,
There's one more special inconvenience.
doctor, I
It's
agree with you. It would be half 10, maybe morning shift, afternoon shift. I agree with you, all those. What would be the changes, the current business model of a school and post COVID 19? What would be the business model of a school? Would there be a difference between the current one
yes,
and the post COVID? If you have some idea on this, please let
yes,
us know.
quite different. It will be quite different. Lot of
How
blended
different?
learning. Lot of blended learning will happen. They'll pass on a lot of stuff to the home to study. Number one. Number two, the hygienic and security levels of the school will be greater now, because they'll be more open to scrutiny now by the public institutions like the police or by medical practitioners. So there will be a shortening of the number of hours per school. People will be going to the school for lesser number of hours. Large number of hours they'll be spending at home and learning at home also. So social skills is going to come down. Emotional release that happens through friendship and community building is going to be impacted by that. So obviously there will be a big change in the way we operate schools.
So if I attend school, maybe out of 6 days, only 4 days and 2 days learning at home, which is blended learning, which you mentioned about, what would be the fee structure? You mean to say that, I mean, would there be an increase in the fees, or it may maintain the same fees, or a school need to cut down the fees because the number of days these guys are coming is only for four, again 6 so far. So what would happen on the fee structure, or what would you recommend? Will it move up, doctor, because of those, 4 days to 2 days? And what is your thought on that?
I think there's a two side to this story. On one side, the schools have to invest heavily on technology, and since they'll be investing heavily on technology, they are going to increase for the convenience created for learning on virtual schools like homeschooling methods. They are going to increase the fees, but on the other side, there will be a control. So the public institutions will put greater control on the fee side of it. There is already a debate happening, parents not agreeing and schools are not agreeing,
Yeah, yeah,
particularly chain schools not agreeing to that. It's happening there. So it is more conflicting in that sense. The argument from the promoters is that we have invested heavily on a ERP platform or an LMS platform or digital content that we have created, and we have to cover it up in 3 4 year period of time, so we are going to increase the fees. Parents have an argument that the child is not going to the school, not using the swimming pool, not using the bus. In that case, what will happen? If you look at the average cost of serving a child, average cost is going to be higher because multiple shifts will run. So my apprehension is that there will be an increase in fees.
but how do they manage is a big question, because you find most of the parents are now earning. Sometimes many of them have lost jobs, and many of them, like as you said, in Karnataka, there's quite a few 30,000 teachers losing their jobs. They also have children. Now, how do they pay the fees for the children, right? But they have been removed from the service because students don't pay the fees. So they're going to be a little chaos on this. So there is a sort of a confusion in the minds of parents, teachers, and the students. What would it be your say when the school reopens? What are the directions, guidelines you can give? What a parent must do, what a teacher must do, what a student must do. I'm sure maybe a 0 year for us. Maybe things go off well in the next 2 3 months or so. January 2021 could open up the schools again back to normalcy. Hopefully, it happens. So, if they are able to reopen the school in 2021 in January, what are your guidelines for the teachers, parents, and students as to what they
I
can
think
do and what they
I
cannot
think
do?
I think as far as fees are concerned, there is not a challenge. Even if parents are losing their jobs, because in higher education space, people go to the bank and take loans for the fees of their children. I think that has to be extended to the school levels there. I was on a panel where there were few micro enterprises, microfinance institutions. They're doing funding of fees of the school fees. There's one model where the load of the fees on the parents. So the parents can take a loan and they pay the interest. The capital is being paid by the financial institution, so the pressure is less on them. And there is a subvention scheme with many schools. The subvention scheme says that the burden is on the promoter of the school, and the promoter pays the interest part of it. I think there is a hybrid product available in the market, either in a subvention where the interest is paid by the school owner, or the parents have to pay the interest and not the capital, and they can take a loan there, because parents understand that child fee is not an expenditure, it is an investment for the future of the child. So that part can be solved because of this resistance that we can afford to pay fees of our schools. But when the child goes to engineering or medical, we have to take a loan because the school fees were comparatively lower in that sense. That is why there is a mental resistance. Otherwise, there is a pricing model which is available in the marketplace, particularly in the private space, where it can be conducted there. As far as teachers are concerned, yes, teachers will take time to come back, and the promoters have to invest heavily on teachers to train them for blended learning product. It cannot be just that you just give them a computer or a laptop, they go back and they can start teaching on that part of it. I think there'll be more reliance on the scripted curriculum. Large chains like us, we are on a scripted curriculum. All our schools, our curriculum is scripted. Doesn't matter whether you are in Mumbai or Bangalore or any place. Monday 12:15 to 1:15 class, everywhere we teach the same thing there. So that standardization of the content is something that we are looking at. Many schools will try to do that part. All these edutech startups will find out sudden good valuations because many of these small schools, those who cannot create educational content, will go back to edutech startups and then invest there so that they can provide digital content to the classrooms. That's the beauty part of our ecosystem. Edutech companies have been valued very high these days, despite not showing great numbers in terms of revenue. They're just showing in terms of number of people who are registered, like the gross merchandise value for an e-commerce site. Same thing is happening on the edutech startup space where they say, oh, 1 million students are on my platform. Maybe 200,000 of them are paying, balance people are not paying, but your valuation goes higher because you have brought in 1 million students there. And these 1 million students, you assume that at some point of time are going to, either the students are going to pay or the school where they're studying is going to pay them. The modeling is happening on that case. Like all e-commerce companies are losing, so these edutech startups are losing money, but they have been able to get a good valuation because the future looks very bright in that case there. So there is an increased investment on the part of promoters, particularly promoters in that case. I say promoter also includes government.
Doctor, this COVID 19 is a recent addition on the future of our children. There's a lot of question mark, there are a lot of confusion that is happening about the future. Now, even if you look at prior to COVID 19, because of those technological advancement and transformation, there is always a fear, and I was also informed, and I've read in quite a few of the papers, that for 40 to 50% of the current job will vanish, which will be replaced by the robotics. The robotics would take away the job, eat away the job. So that was yet another confusion as early as 2018, 2019. Now, the COVID has now added fuel to the fire, no doubt about it. So, looking at all this, about the futuristic being volatile, uncertain, and unpredictable, doctor, what are the challenges that our children will face when they come out of the school, take up a degree, maybe in the year 2004, 2005? What are the real challenges that they must prepare today so that they face the world in the future? Over to you, doctor.
I think we have to see the movie called Planet of Apes. Planet of Apes have been made multiple times. So unless we are gearing up, it will be like Planet of Human, where there'll be two races, one human race and one robotic race. So the robotic race will be supreme because there will be artificial intelligence embedded and will be controlled by them. This is one side of the story. Like in the Planet of apes were physically very powerful, but human being came with the intelligence and there was a conflict between both of them. So it is a natural process that there will be a conflict in that sense. But since man controls technology more, so I think that what will happen is a change in the skill set which is required for a student. For that matter, change in the content which is being provided in the school levels there. Otherwise, I don't foresee a future where robots are going to replicate human being on everything that you do. For example, a lot of psychologists can be programmed into a system, but I wonder the exploratory technique which a psychologist, a human being uses to explore the possibilities, whether it can be done. Yes, a driver can be replaced. There can be an automated driver can be replaced. He can use a Google map, he can use optical sensors and find to do that part. But there are large number of decisions. I'm saying this despite knowing that there is something called machine learning or qualitative learning part of it. But there is large part of that which is still human in character, and we have to look into that part of it. Yes, the content which we are providing, that has to undergo a change there. The challenge is in Indian academia, what we teach inside the classroom and what is being required outside, there's a large gap in that. What happens in the Western world is the academics is always advanced and the industry follows. What happens in India is we are always lagging behind and the industry is always in front of us. When I was a professor in IIM, we always try to bring that gap. We go back, work in the industry, we understand what is the practice, we bring back to the classrooms. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen in our education space. We are always lagged in that space. Somewhere the policymakers and implementers have to catch up, run faster than the industry and catch up what is required. Of course, people talk about Industry 4.0. What are the expectations of Industry 4.0? One has to work on that. But I agree with your apprehensions that there will be challenges.
Yeah. Doctor, thanks a lot on explaining this to all of us. And knowledge, skill, and attitude. These are major things that you must always develop in yourself to be successful in career or in life. The knowledge, skill, and attitude. KSA, we call it as. Now, doctor, like for a student to be successful in the 21st century, what are the major skills, whether it is a doctor or an engineer or an architect or a scientist or a pilot? There are some basic skill sets and requirements for all professions, common to all. What are those skill sets that each of us need to develop so that you live a contented life and a happy life in future, so that your job remains with you? Because you lack in skill, your tenure in a particular organization may not be too long. So you need to keep developing your skills as per the requirement of the organization. And what are those unique skills that one should develop, doctor? Over to you, doctor.
I agree with you when you spoke about this phenomenon of skill, knowledge, and aptitude. In a sense, we call that as doing, knowing, being. So doing gives you skill, knowing gives you knowledge, and being builds up the attitude within yourself. Aptitude and the leadership skill comes into that case. So our journey is like this. If you look back to this end of the spectrum, doing is more, so skill-based jobs. You look at the other end of the spectrums where people have to become entrepreneurs, another set of being related things which are required to be there. So overall, if you see, irrespective of whether you are a doctor or you are an engineer or you are a philosopher, what else is required to adapt yourself, because that is the essential quality of human race, that they have adapted to all difficult situations. Other animals have extincted. We didn't do that because we have adapted ourselves. So we are being faced by challenges like this, and we have been able to adapt. The challenge may be of different degree. Computerization was challenge, a smaller degree compared to what we are talking today. So adaptability is very important for everybody to do that part. Since we are going to see an anti-globalization movement, whereby people will confine to their own countries, the way we are going to other places, there'll be less of that part of it. That is a challenge that we are finding here. So we call local economic development. So there will be LED-based models which will be coming up. LED-based models will work more, so it will demand entrepreneurial skills. You may be a doctor, you may be an engineer, but because we are focusing more on LED now, it will be more of entrepreneurial skills of whatever domain you come from will come there. That's the second part I'll be talking about. Third part is, of course, it is going to be a contactless economy. We'll be touching each other very less, seeing each other very less there. So if it is going to be a contactless economy, collaborative skills are very important. So you have to have collaborative skills. So a job which was supposed to be my domain or your domain can be executed better when we are working together. So collaborative skills, and large part of that will be virtual collaborative skills. I know that in Amrita and other places, students across different foreign institutions come together. They do their projects together. So I have seen that three members from US, two members from somewhere else will come and work together. Professors do research in that way. That will go down to the student level now. So collaborative skill is very important for that matter. The other part that we are going to look at in a post-pandemic scenario is that the changes are not going to be linear anymore. There'll be non-linear changes. So non-linear changes will invite complex challenges to all of us. If that challenge is complex and non-linear in character, you have to sharpen your problem-solving skills. Otherwise, it will be the way we have handled pandemic. First do lockdown. If that doesn't work, then do shutdown. Shutdown doesn't work, then do something else. Because we do not have an exact solution for a problem like this. If the problem is structured, it is natural for a person with logic to apply that logic and try to find out a solution. But majority of the problems we'll be facing in life is an unstructured problem. So when you have an unstructured problem where the logic will not work for that matter, coding cannot be done for that matter. What is required at that point is large part of critical thinking and problem solving skills. So you need to have critical thinking and problem solving skills, and those skills have to be built from the school levels. Trusting your teacher, trusting a system, trusting a knowledge is not the right approach. Questioning that will be the right approach. Now, in the process of questioning, if the answer matches to what is being talked about, is fine. So a teacher becomes a part of your quest for knowledge. The balance part is through your arguments, through your critical thinking, through your problem solving, you have to bring it, because challenges will be more unstructured challenges.
Thank you so much, Doctor. Now, my question is on the teachers. The teachers continue to be the pillars of any institution for that matter. Today, the teachers are also worried, okay, on COVID-19 and this and that. And as you rightly said, the teachers are doing wonderful job in conducting those live classes. But the question is, they really don't enjoy that live classes, as you mentioned now before we began this deliberation. It cannot supplement. A live class cannot. You may have a blended teaching learning process, but a real, true, traditional classroom, nobody can replace it with live class. So under these circumstances, the most of the teachers, they feel that what would be our future, and to cope up with this live classes or blended learning, what should be the role of a management in terms of training our teachers to take up these professions more professionally? So, you need to become just not an ordinary teacher, you must become an extraordinary teacher. You mentioned about the skills required by a student for the future. But similarly, such skills also have to be developed within the
Yes.
teacher community so that they prosper in their own profession. So, if you have to advise the management of a school that these are the skill sets that you must put it on a continuous learning system on the teachers, that will totally reflect and cascade down to our students, and students become better citizens tomorrow. So what are the skill sets for the teachers, the doctor? I just want to
Yeah,
have on this.
that's a very interesting question that you have asked. I just did an exercise called CPD, Continuous Professional Development,
All right.
and the question which was asked to me, that somebody joins a Balwadi as an assistant, the Balwadi, and he wants to be like me. So if the person has to grow like this, what are those career options? What are those skill and knowledge sets which are required to be like this? If you ask me to go back to an early child care center, probably I'll not be able to go and teach there because I have no idea about that. But now I have. But when I started my work, I had no idea what happens there. But there are 25 career options that comes between an assistant teacher in Anganwadi Balwadi till he becomes a principal of a school. So that I have mapped already that, and I call that as a CPD framework, continuous professional development framework. For example, if you look back to somebody who is getting training for becoming a pre-primary school teacher, what are the other possible option? One option is you'll grow to a primary school teacher. Other option that he becomes a coordinator of a pre-primary school teacher. Other option that he becomes an entrepreneur and starts a pre-primary school. Other option is that he becomes a content writer or content developer, does gig working from home. Other option is that once at certain period of time he becomes a content writer, then he becomes a subject matter expert. It is not necessary that he should continue throughout his life to become an assistant of a Balwadi or an Anganwadi teacher. Only problem is, unfortunately, our teachers are not aspirational. They think the family becomes a primary driver and the job becomes secondary for them. But it is possible. There are many examples you'll find out. People with aspirations can move from one level to the other level. So my CPD research talks about identifying those skill set required at each of these levels and developing online training modules for each one of them. So when I was working on why I express my displeasure with teachers not accepting the online education is many teachers will say that, oh, this is an expensive exercise. This software is not available. This app is expensive. Both the promoters and teachers have this kind of opinion. As working with Quality Council of India on the project, then we decided to design a training program whereby a teacher can migrate from an offline teacher to an online teacher on free, no cost involved. No cost involved in adapting to the technology. I said that how do you really create a video so that you can teach your students by creating a video? What kind of extensions you can do to your Google Chrome so that you can do that video part of it? And how do you do podcasts? if you really know what kind of tools are available online, you don't have to just go on live on screen and teach your student the way you are teaching your classroom. You should know how to create a video. You should know how to do a podcast. You should know how to run a YouTube channel. If you do all that part of it, it is natural. Sorry, it's natural that you can go back and you can enrich the experience of your teacher, of your student, and you also get greater skills. So tomorrow, when the same person goes and applies for a job and says that I know all these modules which are there, I can create that blended learning. The promoter will also think that why should I recruit tech people to do that part? I should look at a teacher who can create this by themselves. So other than having the subject knowledge, what else which is required that one should learn so that that person can swiftly move from being a offline brick and mortar teacher to a blended learning teacher. That is what is required. But my advice is please have aspirations. That is very important. Please see a dream in the night. Majority of the teachers don't see the dream. They wake up in the morning, they blame their fate why they became a teacher. The students don't listen to them, they are poorly paid because they don't dream. So everybody should start dreaming, and your dream should be longer than your night. If your dream is longer than your night, you work harder for achieving that dream. For that, whatever is required, you will try to do that part. That will be the path of excellence for you.
So actually speaking, your dream should not get you into sleep also. That's what Dr. Kalam has mentioned, The dreams, when you start dreaming something, that should not put you to sleep. But at least I'm happy that you said your dreams must be longer than your sleep. Hopefully that happens to our teachers. And of course, each of them must have some aspiration to be something in their life. As you said, most of the teachers, about 80-90% of the teachers are from the women folk. You find only 15 to 20% from the men folk. So women folk, the lady teachers are more acclaimed to the family. I mean, let's as a mother, I think as a daughter-in-law, as a daughter, they're more attached to the family. Men are a little different than, but very unfortunate that we don't have more men into the field of teaching. Of course, you are an exception for that matter. So I want to ask you something about your professional, personal discussion on this. Like in my case, I have worked in different organizations for almost about 30 years, and then got into the teaching profession. I'm a marketeer by profession. I used to sell tires. I worked in companies like JK Industries. And I used to travel to Orissa, West Bengal, those Seven Sisters, so Bihar, those times. And after having those exposure into marketing, then I came down to teaching. But your case, when I read your profile, you are a teacher, professor, and then now you started marketing. So so you're totally, I mean, it's taken something different than the normal people who do. So you are a unique personality of teaching first and doing later. We are doing something and teaching later. So which should be the best way if you are to advise some people who are watching us? And why did you do that? You're a professor. You left your teaching. Now you are actually your organization is you're into marketing, overall marketing of that particular institution, right? Whatever is the product that you are into. But how did you feel it, or how are you feeling it? Teaching, then marketing.
Actually, there are two types of teachers you find in academia, higher academics. One set of people, those who always remain teacher. They join a college as an assistant professor, they continue and they do their research, publish, and they go ahead and they retire as professor. That's one category. Quite early in life, I decided I will not be like that. It was a decision taken because when I joined IIM Lucknow, I was only 24-year-old. So average age of the class was 28. So average child of my student was elder to me in the class. And many of them are really, really senior to me because they came after doing 5-6 years. But at that point of time, to be a good teacher, I looked at those people who have more industry orientation than academic orientation. I don't want to decry that part because I have published also very well. I have published my books and all leading journals. I have published my papers. So being in an IIM system has an advantage of doing consulting. So I started doing consulting as a professional consultant in the marketing domain. LG was my client, Axis Bank was my client, Kochi Refinery was my client. Many banks were my clients there. And then the tech space happened and entrepreneurship happened. So many of my old students went to that space. So that opened up a coaching and mentoring profile for me. So Paper Boat happened, started by my students. Crafts Villa happened, started by my students, ex-students. Drooms.com happened. So I became an expert on mentoring and techpreneurs, mentoring them there. The deal at that point of time was not like a professional consultant, you take the fee. but you take a stake on a startup and then you mentor them without taking the fee. And at certain period of time, out of the 10, if 6 of your startups are successful and they're inviting private funding, then you make your money. That is how the model works there. And then I decided in 2008 to enter into edutech space because in IIM Kozhikode, I experimented with satellite-based technology. At that point of time, ISRO had a lot of bandwidth. So IIM Kozhikode is the first one to work on a two-way audio-video model and work on that part. So that is how I started there. So I took a dig into corporate in 2008, and then I again came back to academics and then did couple of years, and again I have come back to corporate there. So the whole idea is to bring out your learnings from the corporate world into your consulting and into your teaching. That is the reason why I opt for a combination like this. Of course, professors who have mentored me in the US, they have done that also. They are either sitting in multiple boards, or they are into the job few years into the industry and then come back, or they do a lot of industry sponsored research or consulting that they bring to their classrooms. That has been the goal there. But of course, if you compare a 24-year-old guy who goes to a business school without any industry exposure and tries to teach about business versus somebody who has spent 30 years in industry and comes back to the classroom, obviously the second one will do better than the first one, because the second one will bring a lot of anecdotes, a lot of data, a lot of experience into the classroom. So I am a model who comes from the first one, enters into the second one, and goes back to the first one again. But if you look that way, second one is obviously for a business school, second one is the best one, which you have done.
So wonderful. In the sense, like especially marketing to be taught, and we call this actually selling and marketing. Selling, of course, selling is part of marketing, but the selling concept cannot be taught through books. I mean, in the sense, you'll have to go to the market, find the consumer, find the right product, convince the consumer, take the order, get the money out. So these are cannot be taught over the books. We can have a lot of theories on selling, but the actual practice comes when you are into the market facing the customer, and especially on a direct selling, it is totally different. So I was wondering, and I always feel that a marketing professor should have worked in some company as a marketing head or some middle manager as a marketing guy. So I agree with you, sir, that yes, you have done something and been successful. Learning and doing later, that has been generally what happens, theory first and then practicals later. But in my case, it was the practical first and then went on to the theory later. So both ways, I think as long as you get the outcome right, I think that is what is required. So it's time for us. It's almost 1 hour. I didn't know the time was just moving out so fast to Dr. Tapan Panda. But anything that starts well, begins well, has to end well. So it's time for us to wind up and give you a big thank you for the lovely experiences that we went through as far as the schools are concerned, and the administrators who will take your points in the right direction and make the school a better school in the post-COVID times. So thanks once again. I'm so happy and honored and thrilled, and to hear the good news about your child going to Amrita Vidyalayam in Calicut and doing well. And what is she doing? What is your daughter doing now, sir? Is she?
No, he's my son. He will be going to Australia for his masters now.
Pardon me? Masters.
He's a boy. Masters. He's going to Macquarie University for his masters.
Oh, so very long back. I mean, then which means you were in Calicut. Which year were in Calicut?
2003.
2003. So wonderful. So thank you so much, sir, and hope to see you again. And when things ease off, please come over to our business school. We also have another school of business in Coimbatore. We have one in Cochin. We have one in Amritapuri, and we have one in Bangalore. So we have 4 Amrita School of Business, and it will be our pleasure and honor to invite you to these institutions for a big talk directly to our students.
Sure,
so thank you once again.
Thank you, sir.
Wishing you all the very best for your future, right? And that you keep growing and glowing in your career for many years to come. Thank you so much. This is Mehdi signing off from Amrita Vishwavidyapeetham. So till we meet again for the next big talk, Jai Hind. Thank you.